I'm the Executive Director at BIC and your host for this session today. It's great to see we've got so many of you tuning in to this session, which is on the topic of Green Book Supply Chain 101 and is kindly sponsored by Publishing Scotland. So we will be tweeting about this event today using the hashtag at Green BIC Brunch. So please do feel free to join in the conversation online. Our session today is kindly sponsored by Publishing Scotland, as I've just said, and we'll be hearing a little bit from them a little later on. So we'll get a chance to find out more about them as an organisation. So just some housekeeping. Questions, there'll be time for questions at the end of the presentation. So we've got about 20 minutes or so for that if we stick to time. And the event's being recorded for a BIC to use in its marketing and also to enable those people that aren't able to attend today to still enjoy the event. You won't be identified as an attendee in the recording, and the recording will be shared to our YouTube channel. And finally, BIC is a neutral members organisation, and as such we do ask that all speakers and any questions from the attendees avoid any areas that may be considered commercially sensitive or anti-competitive. So it's just a reminder to keep that in mind. And as I've just said, we'll be tweeting using the hashtag at Green BIC Brunch. So what is a Green BIC Brunch? Some of you will have been to some of our brunches before in the past. Some of you will have even been to some of our Green BIC Brunches. So this particular session is the 5th in our series of Green BIC Brunches that we've created specifically to explore key areas of the book supply chain that impact our planet's environmental health. Each Green BIC Brunch is dedicated to an area of the supply chain, or in some cases, as in today's, we'll look at a cross-section of the supply chain. And the series as a whole is intended to join the book industry together, inspiring and exploring environmental challenges and trying to work together to inspire change in those areas. This is all part of BIC's Green Promise. To find out more information there on the bottom of the slide there are links to our upcoming BIC brunches and webinars, and also just to let you know, we'll be sharing the slides to all the attendees at the end of this session. So if you're frantically trying to scribble down those links, don't worry about it. You will get all the slides later on. So here's the running order for today's session. In a minute we'll be hearing from Publishing Scotland, and then we'll go into the main body of the event. So we will hear from our speakers representing different parts of the supply chain. So we'll start at the beginning of the supply chain with Emma Holak, who is the production editorial manager at Jessica Kingsley. Then we'll move on to a printer. So we'll hear from Gregory Fitzgerald, business services manager at Bell & Bain. Then we will go on to the distribution side of things, and we will hear from John Thompson, Head of Site Services at HarperCollins Distribution. And finally, we will go to a bookshop and we'll hear from Jackie Hawker, who is the Academic Manager at Blackwell's Bookshops. We'll then go into a Q&A session, and then we will close up, and the event will end at 1:30. So just a little bit about BIC. So who are we? What do we do? Again, some of you may be familiar with us, some of you may not. So I won't talk for too long on this because I know you want to get to the speakers, the main event. But for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're a UK-based, not-for-profit members organisation, and we sit at the heart of the book industry, really. We create standards, best practices, and resources that form part of the DNA of your supply chains. We help your organisations become more efficient, save money, become less wasteful, and hopefully ultimately greener. We hold a unique position of trust in the UK, and we facilitate UK and international industry-wide collaboration, reaching agreement on dependable standards and best practice in the supply chain. As we all know, it's in the supply chain that significant changes can be made by the book industry to lower our carbon footprint and improve our green credentials. BIC, as the long-established supply chain organisation in the UK, has the environment high on its strategy for 2022 and beyond, as you would expect. We're committed to championing the green agenda and providing organisations with the tools and resources to help them make their supply chains greener and more sustainable. So do take a look at our BIC Green Hub after this session. It's a resource for the book industry where we'll be able to share information on how we can be greener and to showcase all the good things that BIC is doing and that other organisations are doing to achieve that goal. So that the link is there on the screen. A bit more information if you're interested. Take a look at our Green Supply Chain Committee. They have signed off and agreed to a Green Supply Chain Work Plan. You can find out all about that on the link on the slide in front of you. It's all on our BIC website. And we are also one of the 3 founder partners of the International Green Book Supply Chain Alliance, and you can find out more about them on that via that link there. So today's session is going to look at the book industry supply chain, the scale of its impact on the environment, and each of our speakers will be offering insight into what their organisation is doing in this space and giving helpful hints and tips on steps that you can take now, today, tomorrow, and further into the future. We also hope we're going to explore a number of key topics that were highlighted as a result in the results from a recent Publishing Scotland survey, which I'm sure some of you or many of you will have had a chance to feed into. So we'll be looking at shipping, distribution, waste, packaging, production, inks, materials, etc. So without further ado, I would like to hand over to Devinder Bedi, who's going to speak on behalf of Publishing Scotland and who is our sponsor for this event. So I will take my camera off now and hand over to you, Devi, if you'd like to put your camera on.
All on? You all good? You can see me okay? I will assume that's all good. Okay, thank you very much, Karina, and thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's Green BIC Brunch on what is surely one of the biggest challenges we've ever faced in modern publishing. How do we help save our planet? My name's Dav Bedi and I'm the Managing Director at BookSource. We are owned by Publishing Scotland and operated as an arm's length trading company. And we've been helping publishers do business for over 25 years. However, it's in my capacity as Director and Trustee of Publishing Scotland that I welcome you here today. I'm afraid I'm a poor substitute for Marion Sinclair, who's our CEO, and she couldn't make it this afternoon. So let me tell you a bit about Publishing Scotland. It's a network, trade and development body for book publishing in Scotland. We're a membership organisation and we're a charity. Our job is to act as the voice of Scottish publishing. We have a wonderful, innovative, vibrant publishing industry in Scotland, and our job is to help develop that and to promote that work. Publishing Scotland exists to help professionalise and internationalise and train and inform our member publishers. So in these troubled times, it also falls on us to support our members towards a more sustainable, greener, fairer future. And it's for that very reason that Publishing Scotland is delighted to sponsor today's Green BIC Brunch. I think we're all agreed, I hope we're all agreed that we're killing the planet. And I think we're all agreed that something needs done, but a lot of us are scratching our heads about what it is that we have to do. Having been in and about this issue for several years at BookSource, I feel we're still no further forward in knowing exactly what it is that we're shooting for. There's no doubt that we're all doing some great and innovative things, but to what end? To what goal? How is it measured? How do we know we've done a good job? And actually, how do we even know that we're doing the right things? I mean, for example, at BookSource, our initiatives over 2021 have saved the planet from 65 pallets of books worth of CO2 emissions. Is that good? Is that bad? How do we improve upon that? Do we have to improve upon that? What's the goal? What we're shooting for? From what I've absorbed so far on this too, there's a lot of myths which need to be discussed and they need to be put to the side. You know, we need some facts around this issue. And there are a lot more ideas that need to be listened to in a wider forum. And there's a lot more ideas that still need to be had. I feel we need a coordinated pan-organisation, pan-industry approach, one which ensures that we're all looking in the same direction and concentrating on the right things. One which gives us the tools and skills to get the job done. Maybe even one which polices us towards minimum acceptable standards. Definitely one which makes representations to government on our behalf, but certainly one which has full participation. In this instance, the 80-20 rule does not apply. Everyone must be heard and everyone must have a voice. And we need an approach which has only one item on the agenda to help save our planet. At Publishing Scotland, we are committed to working across all publishing sectors and with all partner organisations. We recognise that it's the industry-wide initiatives that have the best possible chances of success. We are committed to learning and we are committed to leading, and we encourage you to follow. This is a journey and we're only at the start, and the road is long and it's windy and it's forky. But my friends, it's the only road there is, so the sooner we're on it, the better. Finally, my long years in this business have taught me, though, that as an industry, and despite being an unruly mob at times, we have at our core a sense of what is moral, what is right, what is just. So I have every confidence in us that we'll do whatever needs done. And with that, I'll hand you back to Karina. Thank you very much, and I hope you find today useful.
Great. Thank you for that. Yes, some very interesting points. I will catch up with you separately, Davinder, about your observations about the need for pan organisation, pan industry approach. There are things happening, and Publishing Scotland should definitely be involved in those conversations. It's very, very early days yet, so your timing is perfect. Yes, absolutely agree. We all need to work as one voice, with one direction, and with one very clear message, and also to avoid, duplication of effort and confusion, and disparate measurements and disparate ways of monitoring our success. As you say, it needs to be measured. How do we know when we've got there, etc., etc. So yes, absolutely agree with you. And let's talk after this session. So it's time for our supply chain conversation. So at this point, I would very much like to hand over to Emma Holak. So Emma is the production editorial manager at Jessica Kingsley Publishers, and today she's going to be speaking on behalf of Hachette about their carbon footprinting project, jargon busting and global standards for net zero businesses. So over to you, Emma.
Thank you. Hi everyone, as Karina just said, I'm the production editorial manager at Jessica Kingsley Publishers, and we are an imprint of John Murray Press at Hachette UK. Until last year, I was actually based in London, and thanks to the opening of Hachette's regional offices, I have been able to move back to Scotland and be part of the publishing industry here, so it's a pleasure to be part of this panel today. All across Hachette, we're looking at ways that we can make a difference in making the book supply chain more green. And in production, it's obviously at the forefront of our minds, and we're striving to do as best we can. So after consultation with the Publishing Operations Director at HBBG, I am very pleased to present this slideshow illustrating the Hachette UK Carbon Footprinting Project. As this is an ongoing initiative, we are still in the process of validating some of our data, so the upcoming slides are really only for illustrated purposes. So first slide, please. Thank you. So this first slide is an overview of the greenhouse gas protocol scopes and emissions across the value chain. So we're working to further develop our approach to climate change by setting an ambitious carbon reduction plan. And in order to do this, we need to establish our own current carbon footprint. And to do that, we need to calculate emissions from our own operations. So as you can see in the slide, there's scope 1, which is direct, scope 2 and scope 3 are indirect. So as I said, we've got the scope 1 and scope 2, which are our own operations, and then we've got upstream and downstream value chain, which is scope 3. So we have a timeline, and we're currently gathering data from our stockholders for scope 1, 2 and 3. So basically an overview of all the scopes themselves. So to go into a little bit more detail, scope 1 is direct emissions coming from company owned vehicles or the usage of fuel, for example, diesel, petrol, natural gas and more. Scope 2 is indirect purchased emissions such as electricity and steam. And scope 3 is the emissions from the upstream and downstream value chain, including manufacturing, transport and distribution, and the book's end of life journey. So what happens to it after a reader is finished with it, effectively. Can I have the next slide, please? So this slide shows the key indicators of Hachette UK's carbon footprint. And as we would expect, the numbers all dropped in 2020 due to the pandemic, shockingly. But we also did consolidate from 2 warehouses to 1, so that has had an effect as well. But overall, 2019 is really more of an accurate representation. And I won't go through all the numbers with you all, but you can see that there was a decrease of CO2 emissions from 2018 to 2019 in scopes 1 and 2, so that's a good start. Next slide, please. So this slide shows Hachette UK's energy and carbon and the total greenhouse gas emissions for scope 1 and 2. And again, 2020, don't need to tell you this again, but I will. So that 2020 was a very different year due to the pandemic as well as other factors. But again, we can see that the numbers are decreasing from 2018 to 2019. Next slide, please. So this slide is a 2019 category breakdown of scope 3. And interestingly enough, business travel has always been considered, or often been considered, a large part of emissions. But as you can see, it's actually not as high as you'd imagine. It certainly wasn't for me. So that's something that we do want to work with, but it's not the biggest thing because, as you can see, it is very small compared to others. So on the side, you can see that the largest section is down to purchase goods and service, such as paper and print. So while we aren't directly responsible for these, we can certainly work with our colleagues at the printers and paper mills to improve this. And this is always, as I think part of all of this, is always going to be an issue that we can work on together across the industry. It's really important that we all are in this together. We believe as well that in order to reduce the emissions, attacking the big thing first is that's the initial essential step. We know we can't solve everything, however nice an idea that might be. Next slide, please. So this slide shows what we feel are the key actions to help us achieve our targets. So with our scope 1 and 2 initiatives, we're aiming to achieve at least a 42% reduction in related emissions by 2030. So we aim to accelerate progress to 100% renewable energy supply for all our offices, which will be achievable in the electricity supplies. We will review our company car policy to only support electric vehicles or cash alternative where necessary. The company travel policy is to encourage use of public transport to reduce personal mileage claims on diesel and unleaded vehicles. We will also continue to encourage low energy initiatives, for example, simple things like switching off monitors and using stairs in our offices. For scope 3, we're aiming to reduce emissions by at least 25% by 2030. And in order to do this, we will engage with all of our suppliers, such as the ones in this meeting, to ensure that more robust data is supplied. We also will ensure that all of our suppliers are working to achieve the same decarbonisation goals Again, we think it's important that we're all doing this together. We will conduct a review of paper grades and mills in order to support and seek alternatives that have lower emissions factors. And the current data suggests that there's quite a large variation in the emissions from suppliers. We will also target a reduction of waste in relation to our paper usage. So currently 30% of our paper is wasted in the manufacturing process. We want to work with suppliers to encourage investment in more zero make-ready equipment. And small gains in this area will have significant impacts on our reduction targets. We will also continue to focus on demand planning improvements with more accurate forecasting. Typically, we overproduce by around 10 to 15%, so reducing that number is extremely important. We will also work with retail partners in order to reduce returns and seek alternative methods to waste handling. Just to note as well that the SBTi does not accept offsets. We can consider these in tandem in due course, but our primary focus has to be reduction. Next slide, please. So this is jargon busting. And there's a lot of jargon surrounding the greenhouse gas emissions sector, which can be very confusing. Words are used interchangeably and sometimes differ depending on who is discussing them. But these are the definitions that we work to. So carbon neutral, a big one. You balance greenhouse gas emissions by offsetting an equivalent amount of carbon for the amount produced. For this, you can buy both types of offsets. Avoidance, so avoiding emissions from not cutting down trees, or removal, planting trees. A commitment to carbon neutrality does not necessarily mean a commitment to reduce overall greenhouse gas emissions. So a business could claim to be carbon neutral by operating business as usual and simply purchasing offsets. Net zero. This is when you reduce emissions as far as possible and balance impossible to abate emissions with carbon removal offsets only. So that's not avoidance or reduction offsets. It's also important to bear in mind whether this is referred to as net zero carbon emissions or net zero greenhouse gas emissions. The latter goes further than the former. And climate neutral, and we think that this is the muddiest term and can be used interchangeably to cover both the carbon neutral and net zero definitions. We consider climate neutral to cover the same definition as carbon neutral, but is specifically focused on having no impact on anthropogenic climate change more broadly. Final slide, please. So this slide features the new principles and criteria for the SBTi and Oxford. The SBTi rates companies against compliance, whereas Oxford does not have criteria as such, but meta principles that they hope are taken up by companies. So we will be trying to do our best. So to finish, these are what we at Hachette UK believe to be the key takeaways. As I said a couple of times, we don't see this as a competitive topic, and it's one that we feel is important to tackle as an industry. It truly is a global effort. Number 2, don't overthink it. Something I love to do. Target reduction of the biggest contributors to your carbon emissions first, and then the rest will come as we all learn more. Number 3, we don't have all the answers yet, and we want to be transparent about that. I think if we knew everything, we would be doing more, so it's a learning process. Number 4, we should avoid greenwashing terms and ensure that we follow the science. And number 5, lastly, as an industry, although we do use a lot of paper, obviously, we are uniquely placed to educate, inspire and inform. So as publishers, we have the platform to reduce emissions globally beyond our industry. We want to portray a message of hope and that together we can achieve our goals. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you for that, Emma. Very interesting. I just made a few notes here. It's interesting to see the impact of the pandemic on those stats. And I like the fact that Hachette are talking about, and I keep hearing this from others as well, that we're all in this in this together, and very much to what Davinder was saying at the start of the session. We need to work together as an industry. not just in this country, but globally. And also your point about it's a learning process. Nobody has all the answers. And also, I think it's good to acknowledge that different organisations are on different parts of their journey. Some are quite a way ahead, some are only just beginning, some haven't even started. Probably because they feel overwhelmed by everything that's out there at the moment. So trying to make sense of, trying to navigate through all of that. Yeah, there is a lot. And then interesting as well, the Hachette's primary focus is reduction in carbon, not offsetting, and that the SBTI does not accept offset. So that was something that I think is very interesting, because we do hear a lot, don't we, about offsetting this, offsetting that, which yes, there's a whole debate around that. But yeah, it's just interesting to hear that view from Hachette, and it's about not creating the carbon in the first place. Yeah, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
If anyone has any questions, we can take them at the end of the session. So now I would like to hand over to Greg. So thank you, Emma, for that. Greg is the business services manager at Bell & Bain, so printers based in Glasgow. And Greg's going to talk to us today about greener options in the printing industry for both the printing processes and the paper. So over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Karina. Yes, so business service manager at Bell & Bain. All of my capacity related to this covers all things sort of environmental and sustainability. So as you can imagine, it's the topic, the word in everyone's lips. It's everyone's talking about it, in particular when we're dealing with, as a printer, it's what everyone wants to know is about the products you're using and how you're using them. So certainly in the past few years, since I've been here, it's been one of the things that is spoken about most often. And when you're dealing with such large volumes of things like paper, and the onus is kind of on you to kind of justify it. So it's a kind of huge topic, and one which I'm going to delve into a wee bit here. Just the next slide, please. So as a company, a business in Glasgow in manufacturing, almost 200 years old, you can imagine that the environmental processes weren't in the lips at all of any of the people working there. Wasn't even a consideration for so long, as it wouldn't have been across the industry and manufacturing generally. Second half of the 20th century, clearly these things started to become more prevalent, and into the 2000s when we started getting involved more in it. Implementation of your environmental management system via the BSI and your ISO 14001. It's something that's a constant learning process, and we are no different to that. We make no reservation about being open about the fact that we're new to this, and I was kind of pleased to hear from Emma and Devinder that we're not alone in that, and that there is a recognition that we're all at different stages, and that we all are, to echo Emma's words, like in it together. And so, yeah, we are no different to that, and we are constantly, just like everyone else, trying to see how we can maintain the same level of output and the same quality, but equally, how can we do that in a more environmental manner? Next slide, please, Karina. So I think, did you skip that slide before that, Karina? I think it was the major one. Yes. So I think generally one of the things that's discussed most is the kind of balance between printing in the UK and printing overseas, and it's not just cost, but now you've got an environmental aspect to kind of battle with. So we, over the past kind of year, when there were the problems, which I'll get onto later, in the supply chain and globally, that we all know all too well about, we actually saw a lot of work come back from overseas that we never had before. And obviously it's good for us, and we believe good for the industry and British industry generally if that trend continues. But also there's the argument of the benefits environmentally of doing so, but the kind of block to that, the counter argument is the cost involved with it. We hear a lot that it's more costly to keep it in the UK, and that kind of brings up the great debate for those wondering where to place it. So now as the kind of discourse has grown and the kind of buy British idea has grown, it's now an added thing for publishers and otherwise to discuss and deliberate over. So the carbon output delivery from all the way over in the Far East, say, compared to being local here, would need to be weighed up against the other drawbacks of doing it here. So we're fully understanding of the kind of ups and downs we'll see in these trends, but it certainly will be interesting to see how we come out of it at the other end. And the issues of the kind of greener print process generally, I think when often they're looking at the kind of credentials of a printer, for example, again, touching on what Emma said earlier, I do feel sometimes it is quite easy to try and rank ourselves and otherwise in this process, when obviously it's understandable, but we are very new to this kind of industry wide, I would posit, and certainly we're doing our utmost to keep up and to be at the forefront of this kind of drive to something that ultimately was never even a consideration before. So it is a tough one for all involved, and particularly when in the past you get to a stage as a business, certainly we have, where you pride yourself on the premium quality of your output, but now not only have you got that, but you've got to think, well, how can I maintain that quality, but also equal it using a totally different sort of material, for example. So I'll touch on this afterwards, but a lot of the greener options, it opens up another can of worms, for want of a better phrase. Yeah, so next slide please, Karina. Yeah, so again, the cost versus the quality. So I deal with buying all the paper and board stocks in, and so naturally bombarded with questions these days about the different papers and how green they are, and I'll touch specifically on the stocks that we do tend to use in a bit. But publishers ask and they suggest certain recycled papers, for example, and in an ideal world we would love to just use these and to benefit ourselves, benefit the kind of supply chain, and ultimately benefit the planet. But unfortunately, certainly until now, the quality just hasn't been there in these materials. You could purchase this recycled paper, but ultimately it would provide a book that both ourselves and the customer would be unhappy with, because they would know it's not at the high standards that we pride ourselves on. And the same applies to the finishes. I think because the plastic is the word to be avoided, it certainly becomes that when discussing lamination, and it's a discussion that's constantly thrown about, and it is a difficult one, admittedly. But we're in the same sort of scenario where we're open to suggestions. We certainly review them ourselves, and there are alternatives out there. It's different finishes that say that they offer this alternative while keeping the quality, but unfortunately we're yet to see that replicated. But again, it's something that we review periodically, and we certainly will continue to as the demand maintains and ultimately grows for these variations. But hopefully, as that demand grows, so too does the availability of the higher quality, more eco-friendly materials. So not just on your paper and your finishes, the inks. Again, there's no such thing as a perfect ink that satisfies not only the cost and the quality, but even if you were able to get one that did all these things, there's not yet an ink that is totally environmentally friendly. Obviously, there's been to mirror our journey and the industry's journey generally in dealing with these issues, the ink specifically. you had the petroleum inks of days gone past, which we certainly haven't used for a long time, which were the really kind of the bottom tier if you were to rank them environmentally, and we only use the vegetable inks. And obviously even within the vegetable inks there's now a discussion as to what the kind of hierarchy is, and recently there's supposedly a new algae ink which is supposedly at the kind of peak of this in the new development, so possibly that will be something that you'll see more often, I'm sure it will be. But again, it's a constant assessment that has to be carried out with regards to the availability of it. So even if we found this perfect material, be that the paper, the alternative finishing material, or the ink, is there the same availability and stock of it across the board? And the answer is almost certainly not. Definitely not until this point. But going forward, it's obviously it's baby steps, and we recognise that we're not just pretending that, or because we can't get the full stock of it, that we shouldn't try some. We absolutely should. But there does need to be a recognition from both sides that on the proviso that it performs and it meets all the other criteria. Next slide, please, Karina. So paper. So the accreditation is what people have always been asking for a long time now, even before this recent surge in the environmental discussions. And the question is often, is it enough just to be FSC certified? And the answer is no, but certainly it is what you should base your assumptions on, your requirements on. I know there's certainly plenty of stock out there that isn't even FSC certified. I know we only use FSC certified at least, but it certainly is the building block upon which you can start to look for other things, and that's when you need to get more involved in a discussion. And I think it's important that we get away from this sort of filling in a grid and just ticking. It's like as if it's a black and white, oh well, if it's this then it's fine, if it's that then it's not. I don't think in some of these areas it's quite as simple as just saying, oh, it's FSC, then that's fine. And otherwise, if it's only FSC, that's not enough. I think every situation is absolutely different, and I'll touch on this later. I think it needs to be part of a broader discussion, an ongoing discussion between all parties and all parts of the supply chain, because naturally you can never get the full understanding and information of an entire process that arrives at just one product just by 3-letter word. I mean, it's not realistic. So in terms of the actual sustainability of paper more broadly, you do need to go into the detail I've just mentioned. So we certainly do that with our various suppliers, and there's a myriad of different schemes and operations that they have in place to reduce their carbon footprint and to make it a more sustainable process. A couple of them, it's just introduction of using only biofuel created from the excess wood pellets, and that reduced the CO2 by 75,000 tonnes in 1 year. Another one, if they're only using sustainable hydropower, they reduced their externally purchased electricity by 100%. So these are kind of, and we also need to understand that the paper making process is a hugely consuming process in terms of energy. So these sort of vast changes are really, really hefty and will make a huge difference in terms of the carbon footprint globally. But again, it needs, in order for this to work, and touching what Devinder said, we need to realise we're killing our planet. It's all good if one part of the world is doing really well in it. If other parts of the world are disregarding it and continuing as we all did in the past, then it's not to say that it's fruitless, because it's certainly not, but we need to recognise it as a global problem, and it will affect everyone, and what happens in the West will affect the East and vice versa. So it's a huge topic to deal with, but again, starting somewhere is better than not starting at all, and we all need to recognise that. So next slide, please. Come here. So paper generally, the issue that trumped all, I think, in the last year was the scarcity of paper, and it was worrying for many. And I don't think there's anyone who's come through the past year and hasn't felt the effects of that, which is just that kind of, again, the word unprecedented thrown about almost every day in every different scenario, but it certainly has been that for paper. Through the pandemic, I think when you had the signs earlier on and you had the supply chain issues, there was certainly a lot of stocking up and hoarding and panic buying, much like people saw on a personal level. You saw that on an industrial, worldwide, global level, and you just saw a kind of scarcity that you'd never seen before. And as that happened, to make it the perfect storm, the prices have just rocketed, as with all raw materials. So you have the price rocketing, availability dwindling, and then the transport of it becoming even more difficult. So that's why so many have seen the costs rise across everywhere, and it's really difficult. So it actually makes it more difficult to go on this environmental journey that we're all wanting to go on than it already was. It already was this almost insurmountable task, and now you add this to it. It really is truly, truly difficult, but we all need everyone involved in it. It's no good certain parts of industry or certain industries doing it. We all need to be doing it. Next slide, please. So it's easy to feel daunted by this and overwhelmed and almost pessimistic. And to an extent, you should be pessimistic looking at where we are, because this epiphany and realization should have happened far longer ago. And well, it's great, these promises being made in the modern day and this year, particularly in Glasgow with the COP26 and all these pledges being made. It's only worth the paper it's written on if every single aspect of industry and government, and as Devinder was telling me, the pan-industry, pan-organisation bodies all need to be involved in it. The public as well. It's everyone is affected. Nobody will come out of this unscathed. So everyone needs to be totally aware of the winding roads, as it was said earlier, that we're all on. The past year's shown that you can't take anything for granted in the years to come. Who knows what other things will be thrown in our way? And you look at the geopolitical landscape, even the events of the past day show that there are going to be further impacts on your fuel and gas and energy and availability of various things. So we really need to prepare as best we can and prepare for the unexpected, be ready for further problems. And I think just it's making ourselves as organised as possible, as early as possible, and certainly having discussions like this today. We still feel very positive about being involved in this, because it's easy to not be involved. It's easy to be overwhelmed by it and to think, oh, I don't know too much about that, I shouldn't get involved. We at Bell & Bain, we don't pretend to be to have this cutting edge insight or knowledge or to be so ahead of the game, but we're certainly up for the fight and ready to involve ourselves as much as possible. And what that means each year, we'll have a different answer for. And that's why I think we all need to be really engaging with each other. And if there are things that you think a printer can be doing better for you, tell them, rather than just not going to them and not letting them know. Because ultimately, if there's something you think that's damaging that someone's doing, even if you don't go with them, they may do it with someone else. So we all need to be really transparent and really open. And I think we can take positives from that. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that, Greg. And again, I've just made some observations. Again, it's you referenced again the impact of the pandemic. So that seems to be a common theme so far, and interesting that your comments there about the impact of environmental considerations and changes to processes and materials, etc. What impact that has on the quality of the finished product, you know, and is that acceptable? If it's not acceptable, something, you know, what changes? Do we change? Do we become less environmentally friendly but have a better, you know, a higher quality product, or do we, where do we put that sort of balance? Where do we accept that balance? Where is that balance right? Need for environmentally friendly ink, and then you talked about the potential for a water-based ink, but again, the question of availability of that, if and when that comes, and also the FSC is not the only consideration for paper. You've got the whole consideration of the paper industry supply chain. So it's about those all the stakeholders in the supply chain, as you say, having an influence and having a part to play, as well. So looking at, you know, the fuel, the hydropower, energy consumption in the paper making process. That's just the paper making processes. The same considerations will fall into other categories, such as, you know, the ink making processes and ink making industries, and every other material that we use has an industry behind it. So and then also what I thought was really encouraging, because that in itself sounds a bit overwhelming, but what was encouraging as well, you said, it is to start somewhere is better than not starting at all. And I think that's a really important message that people should take away from today's session, is that it's do something. So doing something is better than doing nothing. So yes, and they're prepared to fail and engage with your suppliers. And also your point about, you know, you may not go with that supplier, but if you've started that conversation with them at least, and it's sort of, you've planted the seed in their minds that they may need to do things differently. Hopefully when they talk to somebody that does, you know, trade with them, that they will do things differently. So I think it's, you know, and it's a learning curve for everyone again, isn't it? I think that's coming through loud and clear. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
Going to call on our next speaker now, John Thompson, Head of Site Services at HarperCollins Distribution. So we've printed the book and now it's time to distribute it. And so distribution is the next step in our supply chain today. And John's going to talk to us about environmental actions and awareness from the perspective of a distributor, with a look at future opportunities. So I will hand over to you, John.
Fantastic, thank you very much, Karina. And just before I start, just wanted to say thank you for the opportunity to join this afternoon from yourself and the wider panel. It's clear as an industry there are challenges ahead, and it's fantastic to utilise sessions like this to understand where we are individually, but probably more importantly, share information so we can be clearer on plotting the kind of forward course. Can I have the next slide, please? HarperCollins globally are focused on the challenges that we face as an industry, and understanding the impacts, not only the impacts, but the routes to positively change and influence things going forward, looking through that environmental lens. As a UK team, we're extremely pleased at this point that over the last couple of months we have been certified as a carbon neutral business. And we view that as a fantastic milestone in an environmental journey, but a journey that has many more steps as we move forward. Again, from a UK perspective, we are extremely keen to remain ambassadors of positive change and ensure a joined up approach with our colleagues and industry partners. And it's something we're really proud of at this point, but again, acknowledging there's still work to do as we move forward. For the purposes of kind of today's discussion, I've really tried to kind of frame some information around how we have operated recently as the Glasgow-based team here in Bishopbriggs in our main distribution centre. So I've got some very brief stats to take you through, and then perhaps one or two items that might be useful to generate a bit of discussion as part of the Q&A, or even to kind of take away and try and utilise our influence within your own world. The next slide, please. So HarperCollins UK, we have been accredited with ISO 14001 and 9001, 14001 environmental standard and 9001 the quality standard since 2002. We were actually the first organisation in the UK to be certified with both those accreditations, and both kind of dovetail and allow us and have allowed us to influence and develop our systems and execute positive action across the sites within the UK. Specifically, again, from a Glasgow perspective, this slide here just shows how where we've landed from our last measurement cycle, specifically around utilities. And the great news is we're seeing downward trend across the key focus areas and the key measurements, specifically around utilities here. Move to the next slide, please. And that's also demonstrated in our waste management processes and effectiveness. As a Glasgow team, we're very proud to be operating as a zero waste site. Again, the last measurement cycle in our F21, we recycled over 97% of all site waste. We're currently working through the first half of the current measurement cycle, and we feel we're on target to be 98% or even better when we get through the next kind of 5 months. So great work, hard work, but that's part and parcel of the huge buy-in we have with our on-site stakeholders and the level of support we see from any site visitors and third-party suppliers. Go to the next slide, please. Packaging and paper is a big thing for us all in the industry, and especially here as part of supply chain and the distribution of product. Everything we do when we're managing stock and doing the distribution elements of the business, everything is framed from a starting point of how effective can we be when we think about our environmental impacts. So all pallets are recycled. Any pallets that are broken are recycled. We're moving away from plastics as quickly as we can, and we've made some really good progress on that with taking out plastic tapes from our kind of delivery cycle. We're looking at void fill. We use plastic at this point in time, but all their plastics are manufactured using recycled content and are fully recyclable at endpoint, and that's B2B and B2C. So the products that you find in a HarperCollins carton or box absolutely can be recycled and put back into that closed loop chain. Paper options are under review, and we hope to kind of feed back on that very, very soon. But we're just ensuring that any changes we make absolutely live up to the standard of environmental change and development that we hope to achieve. Next slide, please. So when we talk about waste management here in Bishopbriggs, it's not rocket science. We want to make things as easy as practically possible for people to do the right thing. And we want to minimise the touches of any piece of waste, be it business waste coming from or operational waste coming from the distribution centres, or indeed our office side of things. The easier and simpler we can make it for individuals to dispose of an item or a piece of waste, ultimately it's going to ensure that those percentage ratios are where they need to be and are influenced the right way. We have lots of initiatives on site. We have a team of green ambassadors who really ensure all the different departments and different teams across the areas understand where we're at. We've got lots of reporting, lots of information sharing, lots and lots of auditing, walk rounds and getting the step count up. Equally, we look for a level of consistency in container use, and that's colours, that's signage, that's multi-language, and it's also graphics to ensure that no matter where you are across the 1 million square feet that we're managing here in Bishopbriggs, if you've got a piece of waste, you're going to know where to put it, and you're going to know where to put it consistently. across the different areas and the different spaces that we operate and work through. Next slide, please. Cleaning's obviously an important factor of any business in any operation. And when we talk about being climate neutral, net zero, understanding emissions, they're measurable generations of CO2e and carbon. But also, we don't want to forget how we can positively affect other elements of, and perhaps more intangible elements of environmental knowledge, understanding, and doing the right thing. And cleaning for us was an area where we thought we could do better, and we believe we have. We're again, as a site services team, but actually as a HarperCollins team, we're very, very pleased that all core cleaning activities on site are chemical free. We don't use chemicals. We're not putting it down the drain, and it's not going anywhere else to kind of hurt the environment. There's lots of words there, and guys, please have a look at it when you receive the slides. And if you want any more information, please feel free to drop us a line. We would encourage that. But ultimately, we're using ionized water that gives us the same level of cleaning, the same hygiene from that cleaning, but ultimately that chemical element is gone and that risk to the environment is gone. So that's a really good and positive step. And again, as I said, something we're really happy to have implemented. Excuse me, next slide, please. We've also removed all single-use plastics from our catering service. A small step, but a good and positive step. We're using vegware, which is recycled contact containers. And again, two-pronged attack there. We're being more environmentally effective where we're reducing and removing that single-use plastic element, but also it's a one-stop drop from a waste perspective. Once the guys, staff members, team members, visitors have had the opportunity to grab something from the various areas where you can pick up some kind of canteen provision of food, drinks, etc., snacks, any wasted food remains in the container, is dropped into the vegware bin, and we actually work directly with vegware to ensure that it's the most efficient way of then taking that away and going into the compostable cycle to be fully disposed. Next slide, please. Workwear. We have, I'm going to just say, we're around 200 people operationally working in our distribution centres here in Glasgow, and we're looking to migrate to 100% recycled workwear as quickly as practically possible. My team, the site services team, are currently trialling the recycled garments, and it looks really positive. And critically, every garment, that's polo shirt, trousers, fleece, jacket, every garment that we use will divert 15 plastic bottles and put that towards a clear, intangible recycled use. So it's something, again, that's been positively reviewed at this point in time, but we absolutely want to roll that across the entire team as quickly as practically possible. Next slide, please. So I think I mentioned earlier, at Bishop Briggs here, we're a fairly large footprint, just under 1 million square feet. And from a global perspective, as a HarperCollins business, we are the #1 producers of CO2e. The numbers are there, but critically, we've been able to influence that really positively. And from our F19 to F20 measurement cycle, we've reduced that CO2e impact by just over 15% actually. And that downward trend that we've seen in some of the previous slides continues. So that story is going to get better year on year as we continue to develop some of the strategies that we're doing, specifically around managing and controlling our utilities use. We are 100% green energy for our electrical tariffs here in Glasgow. That gives us benefit, and I think that's one of the easiest actions that we can trigger as businesses and even as individuals. From a UK perspective, And specifically from a Scottish viewpoint, we're very lucky that we can tap into green electrical tariffs from numerous suppliers. And as we all know, lots of that green energy is actually being produced here in Scotland through the kind of hydro and wind generation. So if we can tap into that, why wouldn't we? It's literally on our doorstep. And again, that's something that we've managed to kind of get over the line here. Next slide, please. This is a big one for distribution. There's no denying it. We need to, and we are focused on lower carbon transportation. We're fully committed to reducing our transport footprint, and we're continuing regular and consistent conversation with all our key support suppliers with respect to ensuring that we can maximise the efficiency that has been made. Perhaps not as quickly as we'd like, but as it's made, we're looking to adapt and adopt the different elements of electrical fleet technology. We're looking at that at this point for more kind of localized, shorter journey movements of product, and that's limited due to the technology available and the run times available transporting the volumes and weights that we're currently moving. But equally, some recent deliveries from mainland Europe, we've pointed towards train movement, and that's offering literally thousands of tons of reduction, or it will do as we kind of develop that. I think you can just see the tagline at the bottom there. Each of the container types which you see in the photograph there carries around 46 pallets of books, and that will save 2 tons of carbon versus being on the road and on a truck specifically. So there are opportunities out there using the infrastructure that's in place across the UK and across Europe, but we mustn't take our eye off the changes and the continued influence of electrical fleet, and that's something we will absolutely keep our finger on the pulse on. Next slide, please. So we're here in 2021. What's the forward focus, and what does forward focus look like specifically for HCP? Glasgow, we've got the green electrical tariff. We don't have that statewide, so that's something that we want to do, and we want to do quickly. We've walked through our scope 1 and scope 2 data sets, and we understand where we are, and we understand what we're doing to kind of reduce that generation of carbon from those scopes. But scope 3 is one of the next steps, and it's a challenging next step, because lots of the data streams that need to be acknowledged as part of that recognition of carbon generation sit with other parties. That's the upstream downstream piece. So over the next 12 months, our team and colleagues from the wider HarperCollins teams will be reaching out to kind of pull in more accurate and consistent data from all those different pathways to ensure that we understand where we are. And again, bit of repeating words here, but ensure that we can positively influence going forward. And critically, we can report, manage, and maintain that kind of journey focus. Supplier engagement and influence is extremely important, and as a business, we're going to do that, and we're going to maximise that. But I think as an industry, that's one of the key elements where we can have a better and far more joined up approach. That talks back to some of the previous panelists where it was mentioned that we really need to try and potentially balance what great looks like and how measurement might be framed, so it's got a more consistent overlay across all our different orgs, businesses, and locations. That's something as a HarperCollins team we're absolutely up for, and I think we're making tentative steps into that, but we absolutely need to kind of dial up there and hopefully get that cross-industry acknowledgement and agreement that actually a core agreed route for measurement and reporting would be so advantageous. It would be silly not to do it. We're also further developing our aspirations and objectives around sustainable supply chain. We've got a firm understanding of where we are just now, but we know there's far more we can do, and that's something that we will continue to develop, and hopefully we will continue we'll be able to continue to share where we're at and what we're doing through sessions like this, as well as other routes of kind of comms and information share. So I sat with my team earlier this week to talk about some takeaways and some stuff that perhaps could be scalable from an attendee perspective. And we've just put what we feel three easily actionable points there. Number one is that green utilities thing. I've mentioned that a few times now, but literally any of us can do that, and that can be from a business perspective or even in our home life. We all know how we can change tariffs and contracts. If you can, please do. It's really simple and easy, and you just grab that benefit straight away. Remove single-use and virgin plastics. We've done that in Glasgow. We don't do it. We don't do it here. We don't accept virgin plastic in any way, shape, or form. And there's great paper and recycled products out in the market. Critically, it's ensuring that those products are recyclable, so we continue that loop of use and renewal. And circular efficiency, improving our processes and our material use and greener supply chains. Measure things, manage things, make a difference. There's no doubt, as a business, as an industry, and as individuals, we should do better. And actually we can do better, so let's do better. I think ultimately, from my perspective, there are some big bang elements that you can look at, but small actions grow into bigger actions and can quickly snowball and influence people's mindsets, people's focus, and people's ability and willingness to support an initiative. Inches make miles, pennies can make pounds, and the smallest environmental change or focus dial-up quickly snowballs and can really influence those outputs that we all want to see. And again, that's something that we want to remain in the conversation from an industry's perspective, and we look forward to developing that discussion with everyone here today and everyone else that we get the chance to speak to in the future. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Very inspiring. You seem to have achieved so much. I hope it's not too daunting for some of our attendees, but incredibly inspiring. I particularly like your when you were talking about the every sort of the easy, not easy, but the quick things that can be done. So you know, for example, that you mentioned cleaning using ionized water. That's the first time in all my years of being looking at the sort of the green supply chain side of what BIC does. It's the first time cleaning has come up, so I think that's fantastic, and it's something that I just thought, yes, we should all be doing that. Why aren't we should, that's easy to do. And the recycled workwear for those sites that have workwear, that's a relatively easy thing to be done. And removing single-use plastic from canteens using vegware, which is a no-brainer, because one of my questions was going to be what type of audit has been done on vegware, but then I read your slide and it said that it's fully compostable, it's made out of plant material, etc., etc. So you answered my question there anyway. So yes, and lower carbon transportation, and also the challenges of scope 3. I think that yes. You're not alone in that. that comes up quite a lot.
I think we all recognise that, and it is and there's reason and rationale why everyone finds it more comfortable to step into scopes 1 and 2, and it's no mean feat, right? There are challenges there, but absolutely. Scope 3 at times can be the elephant in the room, but we need to front it up. We need to, and it's all about data gathering. the more data you gather, the more you cleanse that data and get your head around things, the easier it will become. But ultimately, it takes time. But with any journey, you need to start to get to that end point, don't we? Yeah. Yeah,
exactly. We need to start. And again, that's another message that's coming through, is just start. You know, baby steps. And as you said, those baby steps can snowball into greater impacts up and down the supply chain. So thank you for that inspiring session there, John.
Thank you.
Now I'm going to hand over. So we've done the distribution of our supply chain journey today. There's just a link there if anyone has any questions, if they want to go to HarperCollins and ask them. So thank you very much for that. So I'm going to hand over now to the last step in our supply chain journey today. So we're going to go to the bookseller and get their view. So I'm going to hand over to Jackie Hawker, who's the academic manager at Blackwell's Bookshops in Edinburgh, and she's going to take us through a look at sustainability from the perspective of a bookseller. So over to you, Jackie.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd just like to mention how absolutely inspiring it is to hear everybody else's journey, and there are so many good ideas, and it's so comforting to know that we're not alone on this road. It's great. So hi, I'm Jackie. I'm the academic manager at Blackwell Edinburgh. We are an independent bookseller established in Oxford in 1879. At the moment, the company consists of 18 shops, ranging in size from smaller academic campus shops to flagship shops in Cambridge and Edinburgh, as well as the original Broad Street Oxford branch. I'm speaking to you from Edinburgh. Slide 2, please. Like every Blackwell bookshop, our focus is academic as well as general books. And here, as well as our local customers, we service the students from 10 universities and 4 FE colleges. We have diversified. As a shop, our social media reach is broad, and we're well known for our book groups and Monday night book quiz. We've also seen exponential growth in our games department. Like all Blackwell shops, we have local control over our titles and some influence with publishers, which we can use to leverage when looking at environmental issues. Like all bookshops, our supply chain is multivariate and complex. It moves from production to distribution to initial and secondary end user sales. We sell both new and secondhand titles. Like many other bookshops, we've seen massive growth in our online sales over the past 2 years, which has brought with it opportunities and issues when looking at sustainability. You may recognize some of that introduction because I should also mention that Blackwell's is of course up for sale at the moment. If you're interested, I can certainly pass on your contact details, but I can't comment on the sale itself because I don't know any more than you do. When Karina first mentioned that she would like someone from Blackwell to attend Green Supply 101, my first thought was our director, Kate Stillborn, who you may recognize from earlier sustainability sessions. Kate can't make it. What that means is that you've got me instead, and that means that not only can I look at the policies set up at Blackwell's, I hope I've got some quick wins from the shop floor as well. I'm the academic manager here in Edinburgh, and that means I often find myself working to align what we do in the shop with our university initiatives, as well as pushing for an inclusive community approach to text sustainability. I'm part of the internal Blackwell Sustainability Group, which is open to all staff and determines our environmental policy. And I also wrote a book on academic bookselling. Slide 3, please. The reason that I'm mentioning that is that it includes discussion of sustainable text use, particularly the environmental impact of the use and reuse of physical and digital text. Everybody's devices do contain non-recyclable resources. I hope that what I'm going to describe will give you some ideas for your own shops, but I'm well aware we're better working together. It's so obvious during today's presentations that everybody has really wonderful ideas. And like I said, it is so comforting to know that we are on this journey together. From our own Blackwell sustainability policy, could I have slide 4, please? We renegotiate this yearly via the sustainability group. Because it's open to everybody, we bring a number of skills, different interests and projects to that policy, from the smallest scale to the largest. Personally, I'm interested in sustainable and ethical investing, so I wrote a brief and I hope persuasive introduction for our company newsletter. Slide 5, please. I haven't mentioned to Kate yet that I would love to transition our company pension. Our full policy, though, impacts on everyone in the business. We started our policy by being bullish about ourselves and our environment. We have a mission to become the world's most trusted bookseller and to change lives through books and reading. To fulfill that, we know that a focus on sustainability is good for the environment and good for business too. I'm going to segue a little here because this isn't in the policy yet, but I've recently been working on customer focus, and one of the things all of us have noticed on the shop floor is how much people are looking to identify and be part of the bookshop and what it represents. That's sometimes a difficult needle to thread. But we are lucky in the UK that environmental issues are generally something everyone can support and feel good about supporting. So for us, our sustainability policy really is good business as well as good environmental policy. Externally, we've taken the Booksellers Association Green Manifesto Pledge, Manifesto for the BA, Booksellers and Book Industry, and we're also represented on the Independent Publishing Guild Sustainability Industry Group, reframing the supply chain. We are compliant with current legislation, but for us it's not just about compliance. We've vowed to exceed our targets. We measure and offset our emissions annually. Hachette's comment on offsetting, I think, is so relevant to that point. We encourage employee involvement and make sure that our policies and decisions are made complementary to our environmental policy. We try and encourage creativity and innovative thinking across the business to improve our climate and social action plans. We set specific aims. Our aims are offset Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions, develop a plan to offset and look at offsetting in 2022, to encourage Blackwell's employees to offset their own carbon emissions through tools and support from B0, inform employees of sustainable investment fund options for the workplace pension scheme, promote zero carbon deliveries by bicycle, complete the digitization of central support functions, implement energy efficient LED lighting at all facilities, switch to 100% renewable electricity tariff, continue to promote the use of technology to reduce travel, decrease the number of books returned to suppliers, create a permanent move to hybrid working for all support teams, and promote the use of ecologically friendly cleaning materials throughout the company. Looking at this list, it did strike me that we were working in partnership here with other companies who have expertise we don't. In this case, B0, slide 6. For our carbon emissions, and Zedify, slide 7. For our bike deliveries. That'll be a theme too as we look at shop-specific actions, and working in partnership has clearly been a theme throughout these whole presentations. We also looked at last year's policies when we created this year's policy, and thus we continue to implement all the energy efficiencies we can, sensor-activated lighting systems, upgrades of air conditioning. We reuse and recycle all packaging, and we need to review our packaging use as well, as John was talking from HarperCollins, to make sure that all the packaging material we accept is plastic-free. We are looking to consolidate outgoing shipments. I mentioned the website, to stipulate that customers and suppliers use electronic communication for all orders, and expect that our suppliers' practices are supportive of our approach to sustainability and delivered with minimum impact on the environment. Where we can, we refer booksellers' suppliers to the Book Chain project, which assesses paper sources, forest management, and social practices. We are promoting the purchase and sale of second-hand books, supporting and encouraging e-procurement systems. We also have an interest-free travel loan to all employees for commuting and a cycle to work screen. Alongside these environmental issues, we're concerned too with their social impact. And to that end, we have a social impact plan which is rolled into our environmental plan. This supports volunteer days, paid volunteering, work experience. We work extensively with schools. Our events and our book groups, our carrier bag sales, those sales support Book Aid International. World Book Day, which if you could see our Goods In department at the moment, it is absolutely full of World Book Day books. We support about 35 schools across Edinburgh with these books. Book trade charities and book donations. This is our company policy. And while I hope there are points in there that you may not have considered, I know there are points other people have raised that I want to bring into the policy next year. Black Horse is a larger company within the book trade, and it's perhaps easier for us to say, please use EDI invoicing, than it is for an independent to say the same thing. So I also looked at shop-based actions here in Edinburgh. One of our big advantages as a bookshop is that we are immediately customer-facing. We're not on the other side of the screen. We are part of people's landscape as a familiar and friendly face. We share the same concerns as our customers. We feel the same guilt, the same fear that we can't make a difference, the same frightened indifference, and the same impetus to innovative and proactive local activism. We can afford to be honest about this. This means that our efforts to green ourselves are something that we can both be positive about publicising and proactive about discussing. For example, we work extensively with second-hand books, particularly for our schools and university markets. These are some of our current second-hand books for schools, slide 8. We work closely with our schools and our universities to know which books will be needed by students, so that we know we are both buying and selling the right books. At this point in the year, for example, I'm contacting lecturers, slide 9, and asking them for next year's recommendations, and at the same time giving them a number of options, including our local zero waste co-op for students, not just selling to Blackwells, so that lecturers can pass that information on. For many of them, passing on information about sustainable solutions to book use ticks boxes on their own commitments to sustainable teaching, as well as the university's policy. We get considerable engagement from our student unions too, especially if we produce content for them. Slide 10. You'll notice that we work together with our social enterprise partner, Best of World Books, for donations of books we can't use, so that nothing goes to waste. Slide 11. Later in the year, I'll let lecturers know secondhand availability, and I'll put a secondhand banner on the 800 slides we send out to lecturers for their first lectures too. We also work within the shop to minimise waste and maximise our recycling. My colleague Aris, also a sustainability group member, has championed gently reminding staff to use our shop floor recycling bins. Slide 12. And our Goods In team are reusing every scrap of cardboard and packaging material we possibly can. Slide 13. There are ways all of this can be improved. I dream of a supply chain with standard reusable boxes and packing material. And without reliable transport as a shop, we're yet to transition to zero waste refillable cleaning products. But I think the important point for us is that local sustainability isn't about restricting what we can do. It's about expanding our opportunities, often in partnership with local enterprise. And of course, we continue to do what we do best, and what we do best across the entire supply chain. Slide 14. We sell books. Thank you.
Great, thank you for that. Yes, really, I've made some notes on yours as well. Yes, what I loved is your the fact that you're looking at your employees as well and what they can do individually. So you're looking larger scale, but you're also looking smaller scale down to the individual, because after all, at the end of the day, we're all individually responsible for our own carbon footprint and our own not just carbon footprint, but our own impact on the environment as well. And also your comments about that you're front facing, you're consumer facing, so you hear firsthand all the concerns of the consumer, all the concerns and fears and hopes and all the questions that they must be asking as well when it comes to our industry. So I think that there's a lot, I think, just in that we could unpack. And I think when we have time, if we have time, we're probably going to run over. I might ask you a bit more about what types of questions that your customers are asking. I liked as well the fact that you talked about your policy. You have a policy, it's not set in stone forever and ever. It's reviewed continuously, because as we know, as we've heard from all the presentations today, that this journey is an evolving and changing thing, for want of a better word. And it moves and changes as learning increases as well. So as we learn new things, or we're aware of new things that maybe we need to consider, we need to evolve and adapt our policies and shape those accordingly. So yes, really interesting. And I was quite alarmed by all the boxes, I have to say. So yeah, so if we can, it's just very good sometimes to see it, as you say, it's a lot of us are behind screens, so it's very good to see the impact there sort of firsthand. So thank you very much for that today. So now we have very little time left for questions, because I'm afraid we seem to have run over. But I think for those of you in the audience that would like to stay, I think we can ask a few questions, maybe spend 5 minutes instead of, I was hoping for a bit longer, but why don't we try a few more minutes on the end of this session and see where that takes us. Maybe if we can do another 10 minutes. I don't know if the speakers, are you all available for the next 5 or 10 minutes? Is that okay? Or do we need to end it now? Would you let me know if you can stay around?
Yeah,
fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. So if you could put your cameras on, that would be great. And I'm just going to check the question box to see if we have any questions that may have come in, other than not being able to hear me at the start of the session. So let's have a quick look and see if we have anything. So we don't seem to have had any questions come in. I'm just going to check the chat box as well. There might be something there. So let's see. I don't see anything in that box. So I have a few questions. So what I want to ask, then I will ask, is Jackie, what types of questions are you hearing from the consumer with regards to the environment and sustainability as they come in the shop?
We're seeing a lot about packaging use, about whether our packaging material is recyclable, if we can cut down on the number of deliveries that we make to people. People are very interested in zero carbon deliveries. The Zertify bicycle deliveries have gone down very, very well with people. We're seeing less interest in, I think, more industrial processes, and by that I mean exactly the material that Greg and Bell & Bain is talking about. That seems to be so vital in terms of paper and inks and carbon use, but it's not something which is yet apparent to our customers. They're more interested in something that they can see in front of them at the moment.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So do you think that do you think it's just general questions at the moment, or do you think it's impacting their buying decisions at all?
I do think it's impacting people's buying decisions. I know people who have stopped buying from some suppliers because they're not happy with the packaging use. I know people who have moved to other suppliers because they are happy with that packaging use. So it's very much actually about the supply chain at the moment, rather than the actual book, be that a ebook or a physical book.
Yeah, Okay, interesting. And I guess it's they're dealing with really, I guess, what they can see and what they experience, aren't they? So they're not experiencing or seeing the sort of the industrial production side of things. But yeah, okay.
And I also think it's to do with publicity, because of course Amazon's practices have been in the media, so people are aware of it. Whereas for many of the issues that we've talked about today, those are less obvious, so people are less aware of them.
True. Yes. Okay. Well, maybe there's something there that maybe we need to shout more about what it is we're doing and the improvements and steps that we're taking as well, if there might be an interest at the consumer end. So, okay. Thank you for that. What I would like to ask as well, in terms of takeaways, who am I going to ask this to?
Ask me.
Probably Greg. What would you say? Sorry?
I said ask me.
Oh, ask you. What are the what did you get the quick takeaways from this, that perhaps people that are just starting their journey, you know, if there was a top three things to do. So I'm going to go around the table, the virtual table, and just see what we think the top three.
I wanted to come in this because I think what Hachette and what HarperCollins is doing is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay. But I think you said it's also a bit daunting. You know, they're so far ahead the rest of the game. You know, you think, whoa, is it even worth getting on this train? You know, it's all right. They've got it covered. And I'm concerned about that. Whatever we put, when I talked about pan-organisation, pan-industry initiatives, it has to be reachable by everybody in that whole chain. And we are a nation of shopkeepers. There's a lot of small publishing concerns. There's a lot of small distributors, small booksellers who don't have the resources to collect data, and who certainly don't have the money to put in new air conditioning systems. And that's where my interest lies, to be honest. How do we as an industry reach everybody and put together goals and objectives that we can all see and we can all understand? Those are my takeaways.
Yeah. So more of a question, really, more of a concern is what I'm picking up, and an opportunity, in fact.
Very much.
To address that, yes. So, because I know that the BA, I think, Jackie, you mentioned the BA, the IPG, BIC as well. We all have so BIC has a green supply chain committee that we would, you know, it's quite large, but we welcome members, and we have our, that committee has organisations on there that are at various stages of their journey, and some that we invited to sit on that committee said, oh, you know, we're not very far along, we shouldn't be on that committee. And I said, well, you're exactly the type of organisation that should be on that committee, because we want not only we sort of developing projects and hearing from people about their own journeys. What we want to do is advise and inspire others to do the same. And I think one of the points that came out, I can't remember who said it, I think it might have been, well, I think everyone may have said it, is just start. You may be starting small, and you may be maybe you're changing your cleaning materials, but it's a start. You've done something. That's a relatively quick and easy thing that we can do. And have a look at I think John's last slide has some good takeaways on there as well that people can do, or at least start to think about doing relatively quickly. But yes, I agree. And that the smaller organisations, they won't have an environmental or a sustainability team. You know, and we need to think about how can we help those smaller organisations as well. So yeah, so I think Emma, would you have any advice for a smaller organisation, a smaller publisher, of perhaps where to start?
Well, I was just thinking about that when you were saying it, because when I joined JKP, we were an independent publisher.
Yes.
So we've gone from doing everything ourselves to having the resources as part of Hachette, which has been wonderful. But kind of seeing it from both sides, I would say reaching out and, you know, as I think we've all said today, it is something that we're doing together. It's not competitive. It shouldn't be competitive. It should be something that everybody can work together with. And I think if the bigger companies can help the smaller companies, then that's what we should be doing, because it's not about who gets there first or anything. It's about us all getting there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I am conscious of the time, so we are over. So I think I will finish there, if that's okay. I don't know, Davinder, as the sponsor, did you want to say anything else before I close?
No, I found that all very enlightening, actually, and I've come away with an awful lot of information and a lot of ideas, and
Yeah,
we'll be talking about it further at Booksource.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, thank you. So I hope we've inspired our attendees today. Apologies for going over time, not helped by me at the beginning, speaking in earnest, on mute. You think I would know after 2 years of the pandemic, you think I would know how to control my microphone by now, but there we are. So I will close the session then and just take this opportunity to let everybody know that, and just a reminder again, that the presentation slides will be available soon, probably the tail end of next week, I would imagine, to be realistic. And if you want to stay up to date with what BIC is doing, please do join our mailing list. You can select what you want to hear from us, so you can select to have everything, so it will send you everything, or you can just have certain things that you want to find out about. Check out the BIC Green Hub there as well, and yes, have a think about joining our mailing list. So so it just remains then for me to say thank you to all our speakers. On behalf of everyone in attendance and on behalf of BIC, I'd like to say thank you to Davinder, to Emma, to Greg, to John, and to Jackie for taking the time to not only speak today, but to also take the time to prepare and rehearse for today's session. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Publishing Scotland, and hopefully we can collaborate and do more of these types of events in the future, which would be fantastic. As I said, the slides will be made available soon, and the recording will go up on our YouTube channel shortly. Again, I'm hoping for the end of today, but it may be next week, so do bear with us. And then finally, thank you to our attendees. Thank you for registering today. I hope you found it inspiring. I hope you had some interesting takeaways and things to think about. And if you want to follow up on anything, please do reach out. You can get in touch with us at info@bic.org.uk, or you can contact any of our speakers. I think on the slides there's some contact information there. That's it. So that's the end of the session for today. Thank you for attending, and I hope to see you at another BIC Brunch event in the future. So take care of yourselves until then. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.